Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, chapter 1021 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. So apologies for no time-lapse drawing today. We were just going on a much-needed 1 month long break or something along those lines, so we'll have to do with that. The timing though is rather unfortunate for this chapter, and I think you guys all know why. As I had a person phrase it to me earlier, this chapter was pretty much ecchi. Like, let's call it what it is, it was pretty much ecchi. And that's okay. Nobody is complaining. So we start out the chapter with Robin talking a big game. She's gonna end this fight quickly, and Black Maria basically laughs in her face. And then we proceed for about the first half of the chapter to justify why Black Maria was laughing in her face. Robin's giant flower improves her strength potential, but is not enough. Oda re-explains, and I think this was a purposeful re-explanation because frankly we just haven't seen Robin fight enough that I feel like it was deserved to re-explain that when you injure one of Robin's sprouted arms, you injure Robin herself. So in her giant flower form, the bigger she is, the bigger the target. Essentially, I think this is Oda's way of explaining what Robin's weakness is in this form, what she needs. She needs this is a good form to have, but it needs defense as well. Otherwise, it's equally a liability. Black Maria even hints that the giant flower form itself, the powers of the devil fruit that Robin possesses, takes something out of her to use. This is actually something that isn't unique to Robin. It demonstrates itself on a couple occasions throughout the story, but most recently would be with Tama and her Kibi Kibi no Mi. You'll notice that Oda kind of slipped this in here, but when Tama tries to create too many Kibi Dangos too quickly, it taxes her, it strains her, and it feels like the same thing is occurring with Robin. When Robin creates too many hands or too many flowers too quickly, it does the same thing. Keep in mind that giant Robin, or the giant flower, is just a culmination of many small hands. That's what it's made out of. Or many small limbs, I should say. I'm not certain if this is canon or not. I don't believe it is, but I could be wrong. But I'm pretty certain that this limitation of Robin and Tama's devil fruits is a limitation of practically all devil fruits that produce something. That's just my gut feeling. It's probably often not mentioned because a lot of the devil fruit users in the story know their limitations, but we've seen that, for instance, Trafalgar Law, the size of his room can increase over time, and I think it's proportional to his or any devil fruit user's stamina. So essentially having greater stamina in general would make you a more powerful devil fruit user. I think that the reason why this may not be intuitive, and everyone may not know this, or maybe I'm just on an island by myself, but Luffy is the main character, and Luffy's devil fruit is essentially the focus devil fruit of the entire story. But Luffy's devil fruit doesn't produce anything. He is simply a rubber man, and even when he goes into his various gear forms, even when he does more things, right, it does actually take something from him. It affects his health when he goes gear second. It probably affects his health when he goes gear fourth. But that doesn't seem exactly the same. We get the impression, like with gear second, when he pumps his blood, like he's actually hurting his body in a very physical sense. Mainly what I'm proposing here is something similar to the law of equivalent exchange from Fullmetal Alchemist. In order to produce something, something must be consumed. In this case, maybe it's your health or your stamina, along those lines. Luffy not producing anything makes that maybe not as obvious as it would be otherwise. But I personally like this headcanon, or fact if it is fact. Again, you can fact check me on this, but it's like when Blackbeard fights Ace in Banero Island, and they have those giant suns of their Logia devil fruits. It's just really, it adds an element of cool factor to me to also sort of build in this belief that, not anybody could do what they were doing, that creating these giant balls of fire and darkness, producing them, requires stamina as well. If you gave these devil fruits to somebody who was weak, then the devil fruit would be weaker. It also relates to, for instance, like a Kainu when he, the meteor fists, or when Aokiji freezes the sea in Marineford, or anybody else who produces anything. And this would also, I think, add more justification for the power of awakening. Because if awakening works in a different way, perhaps instead of taking your own energy, you take the energy of the world around you, something like the spirit bomb, I guess, then, you can see how the devil fruit would become a lot more, powerful. But that's just my 2 cents. Also, since we're talking about awakening and this chapter was focused on Robin, this is probably a better time than normal to just sort of speculate what her awakening would do, because she's a devil fruit user, she's had her devil fruit for years, and we've talked about how recently Oda might be foreshadowing various upgrades or power-ups for the other Straw Hats in their 1v1 battles. Well, the same thing might be true here, and an aspect of that has to relate to awakening. And so I think it's really interesting to sort of apply Doflamingo's definition of awakening to Robin, where he transforms the world around him into his devil fruit. Well, Robin doing that, Robin already kind of does that to an extent. But if you think about it differently, like Robin sprouts her limbs on other surfaces, right? It's like, well, Robin has the flower fruit and not the limb fruit. So it's like growing. But she can really only grow herself. That's the limitation of her devil fruit. So it'd be interesting if Robin awakened if she could grow other things. Like, for instance, instead of growing an arm or a leg, Robin could grow a tree that is in her nearby vicinity. Or another person. Could Robin create a clone army of Luffy's, potentially? There could obviously be downsides to this ability. For instance, when Robin grows herself, the original still gets harmed when the limb gets harmed, so if she cloned a bunch of Luffy's, then Luffy would still get harmed if one of the clones got harmed, etc. But it has the potential to be really, really strong. And in the case, it's interesting when you think about something like a tree, right? Because a tree can provide defense. But, when you clone the tree, then it hurts the original tree and not necessarily somebody that you love. So, food for thought. But anyway, Black Maria uses her devil fruits to create a spider net that entraps the giant flower Robin, and then she puts on some brass knuckles and she wails on her. I really didn't like the line of Black Maria saying, "I'm a martial artist at heart, and it's not like I need to hold back since we're both women." Look, I'm going to jump down the rabbit hole here because that's what I want to do. This is slightly political, I guess, and this is very heavily dependent on the translation that we got, which is perhaps my first fatal mistake. But when Black Maria says that it's not like I need to hold back since we're both women, the connotation of this line suggests that if Robin were a man, then Black Maria might need to hold back. It's also interesting, right, that she has a tattoo on her back, which translates to, if I'm not mistaken, woman trouble. And you see that repeatedly, Black Maria brings up Sanji and disparages him. And it seems at this point to be almost purposeful from Oda. I get the impression that what Sanji did really ticked off Black Maria. So I'm pretty certain that Black Maria is like a counterpoint to Sanji directly, and she's like a super feminist, where she actually believes that men are inferior to women. Look, don't fly off the handle because I said super feminist and then said something that's probably not a feminist ideal. Like, we're all mature here, you get what I'm trying to say, right? Don't be triggered for no reason. But the point is that I think that this is what the line suggests by itself, if the translation is correct. And it kind of makes sense based on everything that we've given about her. So there's a lot between the lines here. And the conversation is relevant, right? Because in the community, we've talked about how Sanji, might be the opposite of that, where, it's not actually the case, right? But you can make the argument that it's disrespectful to women when Sanji refuses to hit them because he doesn't acknowledge them as equals, or as an opponent or a threat. Particularly when talking about women who are designated fighters like Black Maria is, like she specifically said in the chapter. Which then would make sense why Black Maria would be, in particular, very annoyed. The woman who maybe believes that women are greater than men being dismissed as an opponent by a man. For me, this is a really intriguing trait to give to a villain in the story because, I'm not going to argue about how common Black Maria as her personality, as we explained here, is, but there are certainly, I think, some people like this. And it's not really something that I see discussed very often. Misogyny at this point, this time in our society, is a pretty common word that you see used often, but I would say most people don't know the opposite of that because it's not something that people talk about, which is misandry. And so I don't really want to talk about how common it is because I know that that's a can of worms, but just for me personally, I find it interesting to see it included, if that is indeed the case. And this seems different from Amazon Lily, which you could say Amazon Lily and the Amazons are similar, but that was more of like man phobia and just ignorance in general, rather than just straight, I believe that women are superior to men. But anyway, the fight continues. Maria is pummeling Robin, giant Robin, and then Robin tries to run away or dismisses her limbs, and then goes for a counterattack on Black Maria. Black Maria uses a web cage, and as Robin's hands go to capture her, she reveals that the web is flammable. And then the spider part of Black Maria literally spits fire and sets it on fire. So it's about now I want to talk about this because, guys, I've said this, I got comments in the last video, right, which was like, it's Black Maria's devil fruit has been confirmed, why are you still talking about this? And it's like, because it's weird. Black Maria's lower half is weird. So Black Maria's devil fruit has been confirmed. It's the Kumo Kumo no Mi, the spider fruit bottle, Rosa Mygale, blah 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 blah, okay? It's specific, it's an ancient spider, alright? This spider could not secrete poison from its legs that I am aware of, that I could find, and certainly couldn't breathe fire. So why can Black Maria's spider do this? It's not a mythical, it's an ancient. These are powers like a mythical spider would have. Why is her spider spitting flame? There's something going on here. I'm just totally convinced of it. This is weirder than you think it is. So I would say that based on this chapter, my theory is what makes sense to me, how to make sense of this, unless Oda has just totally gotten bored with devil fruits and just said screw the rules, is that maybe the lower half of Black Maria is a machine made by Queen. Potentially a machine made by Queen that has eaten a smile. Potential connection here. I'm just going to throw this out into the ether, right? Her name is Black Maria, right? But we know that the robots that are pretty much, they look like real animals. So Queen's tech is pretty much on another level. But they're called the Marys. So Maria and Mary, those names are similar enough that maybe there's a relationship there. Maybe to pronounce this better would be Black Maria and then Mary. But if this is true, it's interesting. It means the lower half of Black Maria isn't tied to her devil fruit, so it doesn't have spider capabilities onto itself. And you see that when Black Maria uses her webs, it comes out of her fingers and not from her lower half. Her lower half has poison, and it breathes fire, which could easily be tag. It's also interesting that Black Maria's kimono actually goes over the back of the spider, so you don't see how they connect, if they connect. But we'll come back to this in a moment. So Black Maria sets her webs on fire, and then she says, I seem to recall you saying this would be settled quickly. This is what you get for defending that disgrace, Black Leg Sanji. This humiliating defeat just proves how helpless the pair of you are. Again, I think that this resentment towards Black Leg refers to the things that Oda didn't say directly but are kind of suggested. We then have an epic line from Brook in which he says, Black Maria, you keep saying moronic things. Which is just kind of what Brook does. Brook drops some truth bombs and people just accept that. Black Maria then goes on to say, what are you going to do now, Devil Child? It's like I said earlier, you're nothing but dead weight for your crew. All those big shots know you're helpless. The only thing of value about you is your mind. You may as well not have limbs. No one needs your help. Part of me wants to sort of interpret Black Maria's conversation. I mean, part of it is her just being a villain, right? But I wonder if Robin supporting Sanji in some way just pisses Black Maria off to the point of, it's like she has she justifies Robin's weakness almost as a way of compensating. Like, it makes Black Maria mad that Robin is a weak woman. Or she's mad that Robin makes all women look weak. Something like that. And then we get Robin's Rayleigh flashback. I don't know how you guys felt about this, but personally I thought that this was perfectly handled and just awesome. During the 2-year time skip, Robin got stronger, and for the longest time, people have wondered, what is it that Robin learned? Like, obviously she's not a primary fighter, but most everybody learned something, so what is it? Obviously her devil fruit capabilities improved, but, this was just handled in such a perfect way that Robin would learn how to use the Dragon Claw, Sabo's Dragon Claw, as well as Fishman Karate. Oda even patted himself on the back in the scene afterwards where he included some of the foreshadowing in there of the technique that he pretty much knew everyone was going to miss. He's basically like saying, yo, I did foreshadow this, so don't say that I didn't. It was just beautiful. It just makes so much sense. So Robin uses a Fishman Karate technique combined with her Devil Fruit Flower ability to smash the roof and put out the fire. Which is fitting because Fishman Karate is most commonly associated with actually using water. She didn't do that here, but she still put out the fire. And then she used her ultimate technique, Demonio Fleur, which I assume means devil flower. And then Robin literally creates a giant devil version of herself, which was just so awesome. Oh my god, awesome. I repeat, I cannot wait for this in OPTC. I've seen some conversation about this, that Robin is shown in shadow, and so people aren't sure whether she's using Haki or not. I personally think that she is. The two techniques that she talked about in the Rayleigh flashback was Sabo's Dragon Claw as well as Fishman Karate. The Demonio Fleur wasn't described as Fishman Karate. I presume that this is basically how Robin incorporated what she learned from Sabo. And so I understand that Dragon Claw is a martial arts technique similar to Fishman Karate. However, pretty much every time that Sabo's used this, I believe that he coats his fingers in armament Haki. So it would make sense if Sabo was trying to teach the technique to Robin that he might have taught her how to use armament Haki. So both of those things were used in the chapter. First you had the Fishman Karate technique, and then you had the thing that was based off the Dragon Claw, and Dragon Claw is a Haki technique. So what we see here is full body armament Haki on Robin's giant demon flower. But like, good lord. And like the levels to this as well, because Nico Robin has been called Devil Child since she was a child. So to actually sort of physically manifest the name that other people want to give her and sort of embrace it is just, it's so good. I see people asking though, why didn't she use this move sooner? And I think it's pretty evident, honestly, from the end of the chapter. Immediately after she used the technique, she falls over and tells Brooke that she might have gone too far. We've already established, right, that creating the giant flower in the first place expends her stamina most likely. And so then to do so and then dismiss all the arms and legs, right? And then do so again, and then on top of that use armament Haki, which also is associated with stamina. We know that through Luffy. All of this is just, it needs to be used at the appropriate time, not just used whenever. So Robin basically got to the point in the fight where she was desperate and was forced to use her ultimate technique at the very end. I have no problem with that. Zero. But I'm gonna go ahead and speculate it. I'm not sure if Black Maria is actually finished. Because again, if it's true that her lower half is not part of her devil fruit and she's special or interesting in some way, then that's been conveniently left out, and at some point would need to be revealed, which means that Black Maria needs to get back up. It also means that we haven't actually seen her transform into her devil fruit ability, we haven't seen her true hybrid form, all of these things, which would suggest that she's not done. And again, would make sense because the power of zones is endurance, and it's also interesting to think about how Robin's clutch technique might have not been as effective as she wanted it to be, or as she assumed it would be, because she didn't know that the lower half of Black Maria is not Black Maria. Potentially. So I'm really starting to expect that all these battles between the Straw Hats and the Flying Six, which seem over, may not actually be over. But we'll see. We finish off the fighting on this floor with Brooke, who defeats all of Black Maria's subordinates. I'm sure most everybody knows this, but I'm going to point it out anyway. Brooke's attack actually was shaped like a musical note, and he defeated them in pretty much one go. Brooke is kind of MVP. And we see at the very end that the Marys are watching the fate of the battle. So Robin is of importance, not only in this fight, but afterwards. We know Kaido and Big Mom are interested in her. Obviously, Cypher Pole is interested in her, so Robin's role is not done. And I think that that's what Oda is sort of implying, is what he's describing when we see the pigeon with the eye at the end. I personally think that this turns out to be a big deal, because Oda bothered foreshadowing that all these factions would be interested in Robin all the way back in Zou. So one way or another, Oda's gonna turn the fate of Robin and the fight over her into something worthwhile. But yeah, we finish with Luffy and Law's crew and Caribou and Momonosuke and Shinobu. Caribou has all this meat inside of him kind of conveniently, I'll forgive it. And so he's preparing to return to the battlefield. He wants Momonosuke, as we knew from the last chapter, to fly him up there. Momonosuke is not entirely sure. Momonosuke doesn't seem entirely confident yet. And it seems as compensation for that, he asked Shinobu to use her devil fruit ability, her ripe fruit, her mature fruit on him to make him older. Shinobu says, I can do it, but how can you ask that of me? That place is too dangerous. I'm not going to let you go back there. The flower capital, no, all of Wano will be destroyed unless we act, Momonosuke says. Shinobu says, if I do it, you'll never be able to return to normal and you'll still have the heart and mind of a child. Momonosuke says, I don't care about that. Please, your help could transform me into a bigger dragon. I beg of you, Shinobu, use your ripe jutsu to make me into an adult. This is so interesting, and this also has the potential and the reality of making a lot of people really salty. But if you didn't know, guys, this is actually a pretty popular theory that we've talked about on this channel many times as a hypothetical example, and pretty much every time it was brought up, you got, responses from two camps. One was like, oh my god, I want that to happen, and the other is like, there's no way that would happen. So to the people that said that there was no way that would happen, or that it was impossible for Shinobu to do that because that's not how her devil fruit works, take your L. I had many a conversation with people in which they said, well, it only works on inanimate objects. That's obvious. So there was no point in even speculating. There's always a point in speculating. But there is a lot of reasonable justification as to why this isn't good for Momonosuke, and it doesn't really accomplish anything. A lot of people say, right, well, he turns into an adult, and as Shinobu says in this chapter, your heart and your mind are no different. I mean, Momonosuke doesn't become a better fighter, necessarily, or not significantly better. He certainly can't fight Kaido just by becoming older. As a dragon, I guess, if he transformed into a dragon, older dragon could be more useful, but still, he's limited by his experience. So what's the purpose of such a lasting transformation? As Shinobu says, I do this to you, you can't go back. So it makes me and makes others want to speculate that Shinobu is just going to outright refuse Momonosuke. And what this really is Momonosuke still showing signs of needing to grow as a character. He thinks in some absurd way that becoming older is going to help him, when the growth that he needs most is purely mental. It's purely a factor of his age, which isn't going to change. That being said, I do have a speculation as to why Oda would do this, right? You got to keep in mind, if Oda transforms Momonosuke into adult, he's got to have a reason to do it. Not just because, oh, now Momonosuke can be shogun, right? No, this does not teach Momonosuke how to become a shogun. You just look older. This is Momonosuke's insecurities about himself. Like, I'm too young. He says this on multiple occasions. I'm too young. I'm too little. I can't do anything. They're all excuses. So if he transforms, I believe transforming for this reason is wrong. But if Oda does decide to go through with it, then there's gotta be something in this which is worthwhile. And so we talked about this before on multiple occasions, but I've wondered whether or not Kaido is an ancient weapon. Particularly ancient weapon either Pluton, probably not, or Uranus, the god of the sky. There are a lot of really old theories that basically speculate that Uranus would be a dragon. Before Kaido was revealed as a dragon, there's lots of little things which would make it make sense. Dragons can manipulate the weather. We in fact see Kaido doing that, and potentially is on the strength of an ancient weapon. Certainly being able to float an entire island and drop it on something starts to justify an idea such as that. Momonosuke's is obviously not the same devil fruit as Kaido's, but it is very clearly based on it. And so, this is one of those interesting situations, right, where there's potentially true that the Strats don't find Pluton, the real Pluton, which might be a ship, right? It's somewhere, and instead Blackbeard or the world government find the ship and start wreaking havoc on the world. And instead Frankie, using his stored memory or knowledge of the blueprints, turns the Thousand Sunny into Pluton. So there's existing in a moment of time two Plutons, one that the good guys are using that isn't the original, and the original which turns on the world in a way that the creators didn't intend, which is very oddly reminiscent of a lot of the themes of Frankie from Water 7 and Enies Lobby. That being said here, so you have the real Uranus, the real fruit, Kaido's fruit, and then you have a fake which the Straw Hats might use. There's a potential parallel there. And in order to use this fruit, Momonosuke might need to not mentally but physically be older, and that's the reason why Oda is doing this, if he doesn't. This would also have interesting implications about Vegapunk. I assume Vegapunk's going to be in the story soon, so aging Momonosuke, you'll get to see his artificial fruit age, and you'll be able to compare it to Kaido, and you can see exactly how much of a failure Vegapunk's artificial fruit really was. Spoiler alert, I don't think that it was a failure, so that could be something that Oda communicates by doing this. You could also potentially see Momonosuke save the flower capital by creating the same clouds that Kaido can and keep the island floating, which is something I would expect to see. You could also see information revealed about Kaido's devil fruit when he sees that Momonosuke has another version of it. Because if it's truly special, right, Big Mom could look at Momonosuke and think to herself, I found another ancient weapon. I don't need Kaido. For instance, keep in mind that Caribou still knows about Poseidon, Shirahoshi, and that could still come up if Caribou is captured or shows up in any way. He could reveal that information. Simultaneously, if Kaido and Momonosuke's abilities are something worthy of noting, then you start to add these things together. The same might be true of Cypherpole. Cypherpole seeing Momonosuke and seeing that Vegapunk's fruit is not a failure, or having some inclination about where this came from, or having the clues could be relevant. So do I think that Shinobu transforms Momonosuke? I would say my gut feeling is yes. But it's also possible that G just says straight up no. I've heard also speculation maybe Luffy jumps in and says no. Or maybe Oda's sort of foreshadowing that Shinobu uses this ability on somebody else like Luffy, and then we have a Gon moment from the Chimera Ant arc, potentially. I'm not sure how I feel about that. That could be cool. We also, she says that it's permanent, but if her ability is permanent, then, Oda's talked about an SBS, and we've seen throughout the story that there are devil fruit abilities that are very similar. Some are just better than others. So it just looks to me, right, that Jewelry Bonnie has the superior devil fruit to Shinobu's. Because Shinobu can only age forward, maybe Bonnie can age forwards and backwards. So Bonnie is the cheat code to sort of undo all of this by the end of the story, or, sometime earlier than that, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, regardless of my reservations, obviously I want it to be good, and I trust Oda has a good reason for everything. But regardless of, if it's good or not, I'm just excited to see what exactly he chooses to do and see what it looks like in general. So, yeah, that's true. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.